We're here today with Cockbain to discuss the issue of dress codes and some of the recent cases that have been decided on this matter. Caroline, what are the purposes of having a dress code?
It's definitely advantageous to have a dress code. It allows an employer the opportunity to set out its expectations in terms of dress and appearance in the workplace, and that's important for a couple of reasons. Firstly, employees can often be the public face of a business, whether that be someone sitting on reception welcoming clients into the building, or whether it's meeting customers out in the field. So that public image is very important, and an employer will want to retain control of that. But secondly, where there is safety critical issues, health and safety matters that need to be considered, the dress code allows the employer to make sure that employees are dressed safely for their work.
And what should be contained in a dress code?
A dress code will depend very much on the nature of the employer's organisation, but it will have to be tailored to take into account any health and safety considerations arising, any need for a uniform to be worn, and the extent to which employees might have to interact with the public. So it may be that the code applies differently to different parts of a workforce. What the employer has to bear in mind, though, is any potential for a discrimination issue arising under the Equality Act 2010.
On the subject of discrimination, can you tell us a bit about some of the most recent cases that have been decided by the European Court in relation to dress codes?
The Advocate General has recently delivered an opinion in a case which was referred to by the Belgian courts. The case involved a female Muslim employee who was dismissed as a result of a headscarf ban under the employer's dress code. The headscarf was banned under the employer's dress code, but the Advocate General's opinion was that the dress code, including the headscarf ban, was not direct religious discrimination. In that case, it appears that the employer's consistent application of the dress code across the workforce and its aim of promoting neutrality across its employees was persuasive in the opinion. However, the opinion didn't take into account that certain religions place more importance on particular attire or dress, which means that certain employees would be less able to comply with such a dress code. There's another case going through Europe at the moment with similar circumstances, so we await that decision with interest. However, it's worth bearing in mind in the meantime that the Advocate General's opinion is not binding, although the European Court tend to follow it.
And has there been a consistent approach in terms of decisions from Europe?
Less recently, back in 2010, the European Court decided that the UK had failed to protect an employee's right to manifest her religious beliefs when British Airways had prevented an employee from wearing a cross around her neck during work because of their uniform policy. The European Court overruled the UK's decision. Much as it was acknowledged that BA had a legitimate aim in presenting a corporate image across its workforce, it was decided that the UK court had placed too much emphasis on that when deciding that the policy was objectively justified. Despite these differing opinions, it's still worthwhile for an employer to set out expectations in terms of religious dress and attire within a dress code policy. However, caution is needed where the dress code seeks to restrict an employee's ability to wear clothes which are associated with religious beliefs. To ensure that a dress code can be objectively justified, which is important when facing a discrimination claim, employers need to be able to show that a balancing act has been carried out, that a balance is struck between the needs of the dress code policy within that particular workforce against the disadvantage shown to the employee by implementing it.
Another form of discrimination that's been in the press recently is sex discrimination. There was a recent case where an employee was sent home for refusing to wear high heels when that was part of the company's policy. There's now going to be a parliamentary debate on the matter after the employees in question raised a petition. What is your advice for employers?
Discrimination or alleged discrimination is never good publicity for an employer, as you can see from the recent headlines. The key is to be as fair as possible to employees. So looking at the nature of the dress code, what the employer is seeking to impose and why, and weighing it up against the likely disadvantage suffered by the workforce or parts of the workforce. The key issue is to enforce the dress code evenly across the workforce, and generally speaking, the more flexibility that an employer can allow, while still ensuring that it meets its objectives, the less likelihood is that there's going to be concerns arising.
And what should an employer do if an employee challenges the terms of a dress code?
Employers should certainly be willing to consider any concerns that are raised by employees in relation to dress codes, and particular care should be taken where an employee complains or raises concerns that they're being disadvantaged on grounds of a protected characteristic such as their sex or their religious belief. Employers won't necessarily be acting unlawfully if they impose a dress code in light of the concerns that have been raised, but it really is important to weigh up why the dress code is what it is against the disadvantage suffered. When this type of concern is raised, it's important for an employer to consider whether, in light of the objectives that have to be achieved, whether there's a different way to go about doing it that could accommodate the employee's concerns.
Thank you, Caroline.
Thank you.